Greetings friends, Jared here from Fanboys Forever, and we're actually coming to you with a very special video here on the eve of the release of the Snyder Cut, at least when I'm filming this, and we're actually going to be taking a look at all of the original merchandise. We're going to be dividing this look into 4 parts, that's right, 4 parts to honor the 4 hours of the Snyder Cut that we will be getting on HBO Max. This first part will be covering the basic Mattel toy line. Now, before you turn the video off, there's actually some really interesting and quite bizarre things about this toy line that we're going to be going over. So this should be an interesting opportunity to do that as we dive in. The next 3 parts will deal with the other segments of this marketing push. Those included the Mattel Multiverse 6-inch line. They also included the Lego push, as well as the premium high-end adult collectible push for the original film. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. If it's not already obvious what we're looking at here, this is the basic line that Mattel came out with. Now, if you remember, during the days of Batman v Superman, Mattel had also done a basic toy line of figures, which were quite similar to these, with a few differences. And here is the Nightmare Batman from the original Batman v Superman toy line from Mattel, the basic line, and you can see that it's quite similar in a lot of ways. They managed to improve quite a bit on some of the shortcomings of that original Batman v Superman line. Most importantly, they improved the arm articulation quite a bit by now giving us shoulder hinge. For example, you can see that Aquaman here from the Batman v Superman line, and this is his comic book repaint that I believe might have been Walmart exclusive, but I'm not sure. No hinge. When they came out with the Justice League line, most of the figures, about all of them really, had shoulder hinge articulation. So just that extra point really did improve the playability and overall articulation scheme of these figures. We'll go through the basic figures before getting into some of the playsets and vehicles. Here we have our basic Superman figure, and it's actually fairly decent. It's a very stylized look at Henry Cavill's take on Superman. The likeness is definitely not completely there or anything like that, but I think it's probably serviceable enough and maybe a little bit better than their actual 6-inch multiverse line head, if you can believe that. We have plenty of great articulation. Superman will just be the demo for all of them here. The shoulders actually hinge way up, so that was a huge improvement. They can go all the way around. You do get a single joint that's quite effective, and you even get a swivel there at the bicep. There's even hinges on the wrists, and they swivel all around this time. We even get a waist cut. We just get regular T articulation down here at the hips. We also get a single jointed knee, which is pretty effective, and nothing at the ankles. So overall, to be basic figures more aimed at the younger market, these were pretty effective. Really, this was the only Superman that I ever got, and he actually came in a set with Steppenwolf and a regular Batman, but we'll get into that in a moment. Next up, we have Batman. I decided to start with the Justice League Power Slingers version. Power Slingers was a line that they came out with a little bit later. This was released more around, say, the home video kind of push for the line. And so you started getting these wild variations. This one was kind of like a crazy looking play on the Nightmare version, only it's very oddly mismatched with some of these white goggles, which are just a redo of the Nightmare goggles, and all this crazy looking like post-apocalyptic armor and poofy pants with big shin guards on. So it's really a crazy looking thing. And by the way, these capes, and it was the same with Superman, look at this. They absolutely attract hair, and yes, I have cats in the house. So any kind of hair that's around, these will pick up. It's this really fuzzy material. It's very unpleasant to handle. He comes with this hilarious looking launcher, which usually there would be a joke about how guns are so out of character for Batman, but I mean, let's face it, if you watched any of the Nightmare sequences in these movies, you know that that's not the case for this Batman. This line was called Power Slingers, and thus you get a bunch of these crazy rubber stretchy things. So Batman's gun here is designed where it has these 2 points. You can just kind of pull and it will launch this thing. What a bizarre idea to like base an entire Justice League toy line around this gimmick, but that's certainly what they did. And of course, that wasn't the only Batman that got released during this time. There was, of course, many other variations, including a basic Batman, which, you know, is probably the least interesting of all. He came in the set with Superman and Steppenwolf. But I really do like the sculpting on Batman's basic suit, his base suit in the film. I think that's really good. You'll see Batman's eyes are looking a little shifty, and that was a problem. I remember having to sort through lots and lots of different paint samples at Toys R Us to find one that was even sort of decent. And then we have all the same articulation as Superman that we pointed out before. And once again, those capes, that just everything sticks on them. But overall, this was a much more fun version of Batman than what we'd gotten in BVS, because he could do so much more in terms of articulation. But he was a fun figure. We also got the armored version. This is Batman in his tactical armor from the film. And I really liked this because it was a very toyetic kind of version of that suit that we see in the film. He is wearing the goggles or sunglasses, whatever you want to say here. And the paint is very bold. It's very, very silver on the chest. The bat symbol is huge. It is definitely something that looks like it was more based on maybe some concept art of what the suit might look like. But it's still close enough to the movie, and I think close enough with the little straps down here and different things. And I actually really like the colors on this. It's almost more of a grayish blue. On the back, we can see that that detail extends. And we can see that the cape is still made of that lint magnet kind of material. They should have included a little lint roller with all these guys. There were many other variations of Batman released in the line, but those are the three that I got. Next up, we have Wonder Woman. This is one of the least exciting releases. However, I really do think that the sculpting was pretty decent on this, and so was the paint. It's not a horrible Gal Gadot likeness, so I actually think that's pretty good. As a matter of fact, overall body proportions are a little bit stronger, I think, for Wonder Woman than they are for the other characters. She seems a lot more realistic in the way that she's proportioned versus some of the kind of, over-exaggerated male figures from the line. The paint is also very pleasing as well, with just your primary colors, but there's a lot of variation going on here. We even get the gold knee pads, and on the back, all the paint detail extends there as well. She even has the gold lasso and her sword and shield from BVS and, of course, Justice League. So you can see that she's inhibited a little bit by the skirt piece, and she still has a waist, though, so that really helps. And I really think that this is one of the more legitimate figures in the entire wave. So in terms of visuals, it's awfully hard to actually beat their basic Wonder Woman that they released here. So it's actually very impressive. Let's get into the super bizarre kind of figures in the line. First off, I'll start with just our basic Flash, and here's the basic one. Flash was such a bizarre looking figure. The head sculpt is so strange. Some might say that the Flash's eyes here are peering into your soul, but I don't know. I think he's more like staring into like the abyss. There's something very unsettling about the eyes and the way that they're painted on this figure. And lots of people said that the red on this figure reminded them of Turbo Man from the Arnold Schwarzenegger film, the toy everybody was trying to get. And I have to say I agree. But there was just something about getting a new movie Flash figure that really excited me. So out of all the figures, for some reason, when these came out, this one was the one that kind of tickled me the most. I really do like the little patches of black in there that they used to try to simulate some of the detail from the film. And you can see the sculpting is definitely there with all the weird wire and all that holds the Flash's outfit together. But it just, something about the head sculpt, I think, gets lost in translation, especially with how kind of tall the forehead is. He kind of has a missile-looking head. To the side, it's not as strange, and it looks a little more like the film. But to the front, this is definitely way too elongated here at the top. The body sculpt itself is quite good. And on the back, it follows suit, and at least some of the gold comes around from the belt. And overall, I think it's a pretty fun figure. But you can see that the sculpting slopes down the belt, meaning that this is as far as the leg can go up. And that's a problem for a character that should be running all the time. So that was kind of a snafu on their part for sculpting, especially for the Flash. However, never fear, because they decided to go all out with this beauty right here. This is so strange. Once again, we have a very bizarre idea for a reversioning of a character. He almost kind of reminds me of his Nightmare armor here with this giant piece on the front. These are removable, so you can get a little bit more of a standard look. So to get a better look, and we'll just show you the back real quick, let's go ahead and take this off. And now we have a much more traditional comic book-esque kind of looking Flash torso right there. And it has a really interesting effect that isn't applied too consistently, but it's all clear, transparent plastic here with yellow boots and a red chest, and the arms are also transparent. I just have these things over them, so I'll take those off. This is flashed down to his kind of regular suit, and it's just bizarre looking. I remember I was just fascinated by this as soon as they showed pictures of it. You can take his two gauntlets and you can actually connect them like this so that you get this kind of giant spear thing. So even though this is a totally bizarre figure and completely strange, I still have kind of a weird place for it in my heart because it's just one of those odd toys. So I actually kind of like this one. The next character we'll be looking at is Cyborg. Of course, we'll be looking at several variations of him. This character it has really quite a great deal of original sculpting, and I think that it actually looks pretty good. It definitely looks like Ray Fisher. I think it's got a very strong likeness, really. And I really like the look of the armor, even though it's not 100% accurate to the film. It's accurate enough, and I think was probably very inspired by a lot of the concepts that they had. And just a very good basic figure on their part. Has all the articulation that the other ones had, and his leg can go out a lot further than the Flash for whatever sense that makes. But I really like this one. Now let's get a little weirder. We'll get weirder as we go. Here is one of the Power Slingers versions of Cyborg. Kind of like a more tealish, kind of bluish look to the armor. And he has these kind of launchers at the top. And I think those are the ones you're supposed to use the kind of rubber band type of launcher things off of. So it's really interesting looking. Just a super funny repaint. But nothing is quite as bizarre as this. This is another Power Slinger Cyborg. And you can see that this one is based on his armor look from the Snyder Cut. Now, if you remember, all the trailers and a lot of marketing material and everything still had that armored faceplate look for Cyborg left as a remnant very late into production. They probably didn't take it out until the very last moment. So that means toys were made of this look as well, and we'll see more of that in the multiverse section in this series of videos. And it's just crazy to see the sculpt repurposed in this translucent, because that is a translucent blue back there. And to have these big kind of weapons that come off of his arms. And also to have these boots that have these things on the back of it. And these, I believe, are modular, so you can probably place them on a couple of different spots on the figure. One thing you can't do, which you would almost expect to, is to put it on the front of his feet. It doesn't really work. However, you can put it on the top of the launcher, so that is something that is pretty neat that you can do. So I actually like this. I think it's a lot of fun. I thought it would be a lot more interesting to own this than just a basic variation of him in the silver with the face mask. It's almost like an ice-looking version, so very bizarre, but kind of cool, actually. The last member of the League we'll be discussing is Aquaman, and here's Arthur Curry right here. It's just, a very kind of normal basic figure. The likeness really isn't so bad, and quite a big improvement from their Batman v Superman Jason Momoa likeness. And for reference, just so you can remember what that was like, yeah, it's very coloring book, and at least this was a good deal more legitimate in terms of likeness. You can also see that he's wearing the kind of scaly armor from the Justice League film, but the paintwork is what lets this one down quite a bit. Paintwork is really good on the hair. I actually like the blonde that they have kind of dry brushed into it, but there's not nearly enough gold on the rest of the suit, making it look like he is wearing just a flat-out green bodysuit with some like brass shoulder pads and gauntlets and some boots. So I don't feel like it's very accurate. Never fear, though, to save Aquaman from being the most bland figure ever made, we have this beauty right here. Look at this. This was a part of the Power Slingers line, just like the others that we're talking about. And he is in the craziest getup. I saw this, and I just thought, what on earth? And it was one of the most toyetic things like I had ever seen. It almost reminded me of the days of like the 90s when you get all these crazy variations of movie and comic book characters. This is actually based, the body is a complete reuse of the Atlantean soldier who we barely saw in the original theatrical cut of the film. So it's almost like this is Aquaman's soldier armor. And just another funny remnant of the original Snyder cut. By far the best accessory is this insane shark that you get. Now this is, I believe, what they intend for you to launch the little band off of at the top fin right there. So you just pull back and it launches off of it. But this is kind of cool, I have to say, with the crazy gold and the shark itself really being sculpted quite well. There's kind of a rubbery fin back here to flex around. And I actually think this is kind of neat. I saw this and I thought, wow, this is like Super Friends or something. So this is actually one of the more interesting figures. And of course, the heroes can't have all the fun in this basic line. We'll be looking at the Parademons. I have two variations of Parademons. I do believe that they came out with a blue variation that was in a Batman 2-pack. I think that might have been a Walmart exclusive. Came with a really bizarre Batman variant. Check these guys out. I actually really like these. These are some of the best sculpted in the entire basic line. As a matter of fact, I think they were a little bit better done than what they did with their multiverse line when they did a Parademon. But I absolutely love all of this. I think they really nailed it. They must have followed some kind of digital asset or something very closely. Comes with the blaster that you see in the film. The wings even have a green paint hit back there, which is kind of a metallic look. The wings are removable, and you can see that here they are from the back. And they also include all of the articulation that are on the other hero figures. But other than that, I really think it's a very worthwhile figure. Here is another variation that they did, which is also very accurate, I think, to the films, because I think sometimes the Parademons sort of look like this in the movie. So it's really cool. I actually could have stood to have maybe army built some of these guys, but they're very neat, and I actually think they're a pretty good addition to this line. Next up, we have the main villain of the film, and that is Steppenwolf. Now, there were two ways that you could own Steppenwolf. We'll go with his first release. This was in the set with the basic Batman and Superman. Here he is. This Steppenwolf is more of just a giant, kind of large figure that is still very articulated, though. You can see that he does have that same shoulder hinge that the basic figures have, which was surprising. I didn't even think he would have that at the time. He doesn't have a waist, though, but he has plenty of leg articulation, and he even has a boot swivel right there. He has a bicep swivel and even wrist hinges, and they can swivel as well. His helmet is glued on, though, so you can't really remove it. The colors are also a little funny, with red at the top and on the gloves. However, he does have this neat feature. That's right, the axe lights up and kind of pulsates with blue for a while after you press that button. So that was kind of their gimmick that they were selling that set with, and this was probably the only way you would want to own the basic Batman and Superman any other way, and you wouldn't get the Steppenwolf. Then there's this bizarre release. This was their basic size Steppenwolf. So, just for the sake of perspective, there's quite a difference here. The deluxe Steppenwolf is huge. He's practically a 10-inch figure. But this guy, he's barely taller than, say, Superman. So this was much more of a basic size figure, but here's the catch. I actually kind of liked the sculpting and the design work of this guy better than his large brethren back there. He does come with an axe that looks really nice, but it doesn't light up. And he has a really neat kind of blue color scheme that makes him a little less boring than the previous counterpart. He has all the same articulation as the other figures, but this time you can actually remove the helmet. How bizarre, right? He kind of looks like one of the redesigned Klingons from Star Trek Discovery, I know. Boo. And on the back, this is how he looks. There were many other basic figures released for this line, but this was all as an adult collector that I cared to pick up and kind of sample. It was certainly a big improvement over what Mattel had done with Batman v Superman, and I do remember these selling a little bit better than the Batman v Superman figures, so I do think that people took notice. Next up, we'll be talking about a few of the vehicles in this basic line. So not only were there figures released in the basic Mattel line, but there was actually a fairly complete assortment of vehicles and a giant playset also released. Now, here is actually my favorite one out of all that we got. And this one is Batman's Nightcrawler. If you remember from the film, when they're under Gotham Harbor, this is the vehicle that Batman uses. It's quite prominent, and it's just a really fascinating toy. And you may be thinking, this thing's pretty basic. Actually, it's kind of amazing. So check this out. If you never considered this one before, you've never seen anything about it, pay attention. There's several things that this can do. First off, we have an opening cockpit, of course. So we'll take a closer look at that. Inside, we have our basic Batman. You have to lean him as far back as possible so that his ears don't catch in the hinge. That's unfortunate. I wish it was just a tiny little bit bigger so that wasn't such a problem. But at least he does fit. Once you get the cockpit closed up, you can see that we do have an escape hatch at the top, which I suppose is similar to the film, but you can't really do anything with it. You also have lots of detailing that's really pretty accurate to the film. It's not exactly, I don't think, as dark as it is in the movie, but you can see that all the mechanical details are actually pretty well thought out. On the back, you can see that we have more of those great details. It looks really very true to the film for it to be kind of a basic vehicle. And if memory serves, I believe that this was fairly reasonably priced too. I think it might have been $45 or so. And for what you're going to see that it's able to do, I think you'll be quite impressed. And this thing really is large, by the way. I'll go ahead and put the basic flash here below it. And quite obviously, it really dwarfs a basic sized figure. Now, you may notice that under it, we have transparent plastic making up these posts to keep it steadied, and that's to kind of give it more stability. It also has these little rolling wheels down here, but you'll see that it helps it do something far more impressive. We do have 2 launchers here at the top, and they have orange missiles, of course, to comply with safety standards. Once you put in 5 AA batteries, that's where the real magic begins. Check this out. We go to the bottom, and we turn the switch on.
Online and ready for battle.
All I know is that I guess that's maybe supposed to be Alfred's voice, because it kind of sounds slightly British. But you can see that we have this red light going right here. We're actually going to switch out to Cyborg to reenact the movie. There's 2 different ones. This one over here is lights and sounds.
Weapon systems activated.
Press it again. You get the idea. It's really a wide variety of sounds, and with the red light in the front, it kind of gives it a more of an intimidating presence than it probably should have. But here's where things really get crazy. It's the other button that has the cogwheel right here. Check it out. So it's probably fairly obvious by now why I think this thing is so cool. It's very impressive, and it has a really cool electronic feature. So the next item we'll be looking at is the giant flying fox vehicle. And this thing, when I say giant, I truly mean it. I have to get way out of my review station to even see the thing. We'll be looking at a basic figure beside of it, and you can see that it's really quite small compared to this thing. Now, no matter how large this is, it's still grossly out of scale for how big it is in the movie. Really, this would probably be best for a 3 3/4 figure line, but the basic line is more of a 6-inch scaled line. So we can actually see that we have launchers right here, and here we have some hidden compartments with more launchers, like a turret right there. We can see that up here we actually have a functioning cockpit. You open it up and I have some of the accessories. Actually comes with one of the mother boxes right here. And we also get a zip line, as every little playset needs something like this. The cockpit is fairly basic, but you get the idea. It can fit a figure fairly easily, but they kind of have to lay down in it, and then just barely will it close, but it works. Next up, you have this little dial that you turn, and you get a whole weapons rack, and this is mostly casts of previous weapons that we've seen. You can also see that there's some sticker detail on these little wall panels. What you do next, you can move that up, and then this whole assembly comes up, and it locks into place, and you end up with kind of a tower. Down here, you have almost like a jail, but you can, if you wish, open this up. You actually get some reissues of Dark Knight Rises accessories from that basic line. This thing that Bane would have worn in one of his basic figures. And this one that Batman wore in one of the basic figures. You can see that it almost looks like an elevator once you do that. And it goes all the way up here. Now if you press this red button, you have a trap door, like any good playset should. You also get one of these kind of robot arms that looks more in line with something you'd see in an Iron Man film. You can put it at the top on this hinge. You can actually take the zip line and hook that to the top, right up here. In the front here, we do have like a foil red sticker. This opens up, and we get an extra little computer console. You can also go to a red button on the side here. Once we press it, from there, you can actually see that we have a little computer room. This is supposed to be a seat for a figure right here, but if we try to take a basic figure, the funny Cyborg, and we try to put him on it, I don't even know how they expected this to work. I guess he can kind of hang like this, but he's not even on the seat. I guess you could sort of put him like this, and it will stand him on it. You have to have the floor kind of open for him to do that. There's also some more decals inside. From here, you kind of have an entryway into the main portion. You can see that there's more detail on the interior, and more over here. And if you wish, you can take up this grate. So by putting it up, you get lots more room on the interior. I actually like it like this because it sort of does put me in mind of those scenes in the film. Over here, you can see that we have another launcher, and we have another one of these compartments with the turrets. So some positives about the Flying Fox playset vehicle thing is that it was really quite large, and you got a really massive amount of toy for, I believe at the time, it might have been $60. It might have been $60 or $70. So I was more than happy to pay that at the time for the huge size. And it was also a Walmart exclusive, if I remember correctly. However, these days, if you get lucky, you can actually find one of these at Ollie's closeout stores. And they're only $20 when you find those. They had them for Christmas of 2020, and clearly Mattel had a huge backlog of them that Walmart must have never needed, or Walmart had a lot of them that they could never sell. And really, for that reason, I think they're pretty nice if you can snag one for $20 or $30. But there's a lot of things about it that's quite disappointing. The play area looks so generic, and also it's really quite undersized, even though the thing is huge. That's the trouble with doing a playset based on a behemoth from a film like this. Really, no matter how many resources you put into something like this, it's going to be very difficult to ever have it approach any sort of accuracy, even with the best of intentions. So it's a little frustrating, but I do appreciate their gusto and what they were trying to accomplish. The Flying Fox was a neat vehicle in the movie, and I think this at least attempts to get to the heart of that. And I think it's a fine toy, but probably more meant for younger collectors, as the basic line probably was intended. It's worth mentioning that we got one more item in the playset vehicle category. It was a re-release of the Walmart exclusive Batman v Superman Batcave playset, and that was a really cool playset. I eventually got one for really cheap, I think $30 on clearance, and it was a great deal for what it was. This Justice League version was kind of strange in some of its choices. It had yellow everywhere, and that was kind of odd, but I do appreciate that it at least has some interesting references to the film with Gotham Harbor, and maybe perhaps some kind of ties to some of the original concepts that Zack Snyder wanted to put in the film, since it does appear that it's more of a prison playset. So that's interesting as well. And that does it for part one of our 4-part Justice League retrospective from the end of 2017 when these toys were originally released. Please join me for more, as the next episode will actually be looking at Mattel's other line, which was more aimed at the adult collector, their DC Multiverse Justice League 6-inch line. So be on the lookout for that, and I hope you all are having a great time watching the Snyder Cut on HBO Max. Alright guys, until then, be on the lookout for the next video. I'll see you later. God bless you and yours. Take care.